They say you're too quiet, too intense, or too much. When you speak, the room goes silent, not because you're wrong, but because you're different. You see things others miss. You question what they accept without thought. Slowly, people start drifting away. They laugh together at things that don't interest you. They get lost in drama, trends, and shallow conversations. Meanwhile, you're stuck thinking about life, meaning, even death. You try to blend in, smile when expected, but deep down, you feel like a stranger among your own kind. Eventually, you wonder, is there something wrong with me? But what if the problem isn't you? What if society just isn't made for people like you? Arthur Schopenhauer, the German philosopher, believed that real, raw intelligence isolates. The deeper you think, the more alienated you become. Most people don't want the truth, they want comfort, and intelligent people threaten that comfort. This video dives into the brutal truth. Schopenhauer uncovered why society rejects true intelligence, and why your loneliness might be the clearest proof of your mind's power. It starts early. Imagine being in a classroom, surrounded by kids your age, but feeling off, not superior, just disconnected. While others laugh without a second thought, you're lost in your mind. Why do people say things they don't really mean? Why does small talk feel like noise? Why does life feel like something you watch instead of live? This is the first taste of the silent curse intelligence brings, not the kind measured by grades and awards, but the kind that questions too much and feels too deeply. The kind that notices contradictions, subtle hypocrisies, and finds it impossible to go with the flow. As you get older, this disconnect grows. You start holding back in conversations. You've learned honesty makes people uncomfortable. Asking why too many times kills the mood. So you nod, smile, pretend, because being truly understood feels impossible. People mistake your quiet for arrogance. But really, you're just exhausted from trying to explain yourself. You're not called to just learn that depth scares people. So you lock your insights away, censor your questions, hide your pain. Here's the paradox. Society claims to admire intelligence, but emotionally rejects it at its rawest. We worship genius in theory, but in real life, truly intelligent people are isolated. Why? Because intelligence doesn't just solve problems, it challenges norms, sees through illusions, and questions what most accept blindly. And that makes people uncomfortable. You become too complex for surface-level connections, too analytical to enjoy simple joys without dissecting them, too aware to ever fully relax. And the emotional cost, invisible but crushing. You sit in rooms full of people but feel utterly alone. You long for a connection that goes beyond shallow talks, someone who doesn't just hear you but truly gets you. But that person never comes, so you wonder again, is there something wrong with me? That's the silent tragedy. The world doesn't teach intelligent people how to cope with this loneliness. It teaches you how to succeed, perform, but not how to exist when your mind is wired differently, so you adapt. You become a chameleon, blending in, dumbing down, learning when to be quiet, not because you want to, but because you have to. Because every time you spoke your truth, you paid a price. But inside, the weight builds a quiet sadness, a hunger for meaning, a question. Am I the only one who feels this way? You're not. What you feel, the silent suffering, isn't weakness. It's a sign of a rare mind trying to survive in a shallow world. Schopenhauer saw this centuries ago. He didn't just understand your pain, he predicted it. There's a hidden rule running through human society. Don't think too much. Don't question the script. Don't step out of line. Just follow what's popular. Say what's safe. Agree with the loudest voice. This is what Schopenhauer called the herd. People surrender independent thought, not because they're stupid, but because thinking for yourself is dangerous. That's why truly intelligent people are feared, not because they're smarter, but because they refuse to worship the herd. When someone asks why, the group gets nervous. When someone notices contradictions, lies, and blind traditions, the group becomes defensive. It's not logical, it's psychological. In every classroom, office, or community, there's a quiet rule: conform or get cast out. And intelligent people naturally resist this pressure, not out of rebellion, but from curiosity and a search for truth. But here's the uncomfortable fact: thinking differently is not admired, it's a threat. Intelligence doesn't just question facts, it questions comfort, disrupts illusions, and exposes what people want to ignore. When you enter a room and point out the group's hypocrisy, suggest an idea no one has approved, or challenge the system. You don't get applause. You get labeled weird, too intense, or not a team player. Take the modern workplace as an example. We claim to want innovation, creativity, new ideas, but in reality, the people who raise uncomfortable truths are often sidelined. Those who question inefficient systems are told to stop overthinking. Those who avoid gossip or fake positivity are branded antisocial. Schools too. Students who follow rules blindly get praised. Those who ask too many questions are called disruptive, not for being wrong, but for challenging authority. Even on free thought should thrive. Complexity is punished. Algorithms reward simplicity, repetition, emotional manipulation, not nuance, not depth, not intelligence. So what happens to the truly intelligent in a world like this? They learn to hide, to shrink, to wear masks, just to survive. And society gets exactly what it wants. Silent brilliance, genius trapped behind social anxiety, potential buried under self-doubt, wisdom never shared because it's never welcomed. The ultimate irony. The world says it wants intelligence, but only the kind that plays nice, doesn't make people uncomfortable, fits inside a neat little box. Real intelligence is messy. It doesn't follow slogans, care about trends, or flatter egos. It confronts egos. That's why society pushes it away. To be truly intelligent is to be misunderstood, feared, and alone in a room full of people, nodding to things you know are false. It's not just rejection, it's social exile. Because when you see through the game, you stop playing it, and when you stop playing, you stop belonging. That's the cost of nonconformity, for those who refuse to betray their minds. It's a price paid, quietly, every day. But Schopenhauer believed this suffering had meaning. Intelligence isn't a privilege, it's a burden few can carry, and those who carry it walk a lonelier, but truer path. He wasn't your typical philosopher. He didn't sugarcoat reality or promise happiness. He believed life is essentially suffering, and the more conscious you are, the more you feel it. Too many, that sounds bleak, but for those who've lived through the quiet despair of feeling too much and thinking too deeply, it feels honest, like finally hearing the truth. Born in 1788 in Germany, Schopenhauer grew up in a wealthy but emotionally cold household. A strict, rational father and a literary socialite mother who disapproved of his pessimism shaped his isolated childhood. From early on, he felt like an outsider. He observed life as a witness, not a participant, and his philosophy reflects that. His key idea: a man can be himself only so long as he is alone. According to Schopenhauer, intelligence leads to isolation, not by choice, but consequence. The deeper your understanding, the more alienated you become from those living on the surface. At the core of his worldview is the will, a blind, irrational force driving all life. The will isn't logical or concerned with truth, it just desires endlessly and painfully. Most people are ruled by this will. They chase pleasure, power, and approval, not through thoughtful choice, but from unconscious craving. But the truly intelligent see this trap. They step outside it. And that's when the suffering starts. Once you see the world as a dance of illusions powered by unconscious desire, you can't unsee it. You no longer laugh at the same jokes or endure superficial small talk. You become a ghost drifting at a never-ending party, wondering why no one else feels the emptiness. Schopenhauer said, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him." In other words, ignorance isn't just bliss, it's belonging. When you start asking deep questions about meaning, morality, and mortality, you lose your place in the tribe, not because people hate you, but because they don't understand you. Schopenhauer didn't hate society. He believed society and solitude serve different purposes. Society entertains. Solitude makes you real. The truly intelligent eventually crave what society can't offer: clarity, and authenticity. That's why Schopenhauer praised solitude as loneliness, but liberation. Great men are like eagles and build their nest on some lofty solitude. He wrote to him, intelligence wasn't glamorous. It was a curse that stripped comfort away, forcing existential exile. Yet, he didn't advocate despair. He believed a higher way was possible through contemplation, art, and philosophy, transforming suffering into insight and alienation into wisdom. He was one of few who said the pain from thinking too much is real. The disconnection when others don't get your thoughts is valid. The sense that something's wrong with the world is not imagination. That's why his work connects with those who feel out of place, sitting in classrooms, meetings, family dinners, surrounded by words but starving for meaning. For sure, suffering is the price of clarity, and while the world mocks those who see too much, he whispered from the pages, "You are not broken, you are just awake." But what if loneliness, that silent ache you feel, isn't a flaw at all? What if it's actually proof that you see more, sense more, and crave more than the world around you can offer? Loneliness, in Schopenhauer's eyes, is the price. For clarity, modern psychology is catching up to what he intuited centuries ago. There is a direct link between intelligence and social isolation. A 2016 study in the British Journal of Psychology found something surprising. People with higher intelligence tend to feel less satisfied by frequent social interaction. For most people, being with friends brings happiness. But if your mind is wired for depth, too much social time often leaves you drained, frustrated, or empty. Why? Because the conversations feel surface level. Because rather than gossip or drama, your mind craves ideas, something with layers, something real. This creates what scientists call cognitive loneliness. It's not just about lacking company. You can be surrounded by people and feel like you're on an island. You want connection, but resonance is what's missing. When those around you don't think or feel as deeply, it can feel lonelier than being physically alone. But here's the paradox. Highly intelligent people are often extremely introspective. They dwell in their own heads, creating internal worlds others never see. But they're also human. They long for that one person who truly understands, the one who can read between the lines and actually get it. It's not about being admired. It's about being understood. And this is the trap. The smarter you are, the fewer people there are who can understand your loneliness. It isn't vanity. It's how we're wired. Psychologist Dr. Thomas Suddendorf points out that our brains evolved in tight-knit groups, 100–150 people at most, where fitting in was essential for survival. Modern life, however, is nothing like those tribal societies. Today, high-IQ people process information faster, think abstractly, and break social norms. Their minds are like evolutionary outliers. The world hasn't quite caught up. This mismatch comes with real emotional costs. Too much intelligence often leads to emotional overload, not because you're broken, but because you sense more than most can handle. Imagine thinking of 10 possible meanings for an offhand remark, or noticing every subtle shift in tone and micro-expression around the dinner table. This isn't a superpower. It often becomes an invisible burden. Studies from Harvard even suggest that highly intelligent children report greater feelings of alienation and existential anxiety from a young age. They learn early on that they are different, and rather than being celebrated, that difference is often discouraged. Why do you think so much? Why can't you just be normal? Stop asking so many questions. Over time, the world's message is clear. Maybe there's something wrong with you. This leads to an internal tug-of-war. On one hand, you want to open up, to let your thoughts and feelings out. On the other, you've learned to protect yourself through silence and self-censorship. What forms is an emotional wall, hoping that maybe, just maybe, someone will take the time to look behind it. Most never do. Even relationships aren't immune. Highly intelligent people often struggle in romance, not because they don't want to love, but because they want to be seen, really seen. They may seem aloof or distant, but it's often a shield protecting depth that's been ignored or mishandled too many times. Most people love the idea of intelligence, not the emotional complexity that comes with it. Psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski called this overexcitability, a heightened sensitivity in 5 areas: intellect, emotion, imagination, senses, and psychomotor activity. Simply put, smart people feel more, think more, and suffer more. That intensity fuels creativity and insight, but it also amplifies the gulf between you and those around you. Here's the hidden truth. Loneliness isn't always a sign that something is missing. Sometimes it means something is unmatched. A mind that sees through illusion, a heart that won't settle for small talk, a soul hungry for meaning instead of comfort. People like that will always be a little bit apart, not because they failed socially, but because they're built for something deeper. So if you know this kind of loneliness, not just the absence of people, but the absence of resonance, it may not be a curse at all. It could be your quiet confirmation that you're not just living but truly awake. Strangely enough, intelligence at first attracts admiration. It can even draw a little envier, the kind people won't admit to. But under the surface, envy can shift into rejection. Most people don't realize it, but deep down, being around someone with clarity and confidence can make insecurities flare up. The ego gets restless. They don't hear your words, they hear their own shortcomings echoing back. And that's where something called the Dunning-Kruger effect comes in. In simplest terms, people who know less tend to overestimate their skills. When someone truly intelligent is around, that comfortable illusion shatters. Instead of facing reality, people deflect. They call you arrogant, cold, aloof. They say, "Who do you think you are?" when all you did was speak your mind. Their ego heard an insult you never made. Intelligence doesn't just question ideas, it shakes up identities. This is dangerous territory for the human mind, which craves belonging above almost all else. Our ancestors survived by fitting in. Standing out was risky, even life-threatening. So when someone challenges the group, ancient instincts kick in. Suddenly, you're a threat. Consciously or not, the group moves to reject what it doesn't understand. History is packed with examples. Socrates, perhaps the wisest philosopher ever, was executed, not because he was wrong, but because he asked the wrong questions, exposed the comfortable ignorance of powerful people. Galileo was punished for disrupting the worldview that placed Earth at the center of the universe. Nikola Tesla died alone, misunderstood, his genius ignored. Alan Turing, who helped end World War II, was ostracized and persecuted, leading to his tragic end. These aren't just tales of misunderstanding, but of egos wounded by someone else's insight. New truths force us to re-examine old lies, and that's often too much to bear. Many would rather reject the messenger than face themselves. It still happens today. The world says it values intelligence, but the moment deep thinkers challenge the status quo, they're sidelined. Innovators, contrarians, and truth-tellers are ignored in meetings, written off in classrooms, and dismissed in personal lives. Why? Because intelligence without conformity makes people uncomfortable. It holds up a mirror to our own mediocrity, and that's difficult to accept. The paradox is glaring. People want intelligence as long as it protects their comfort. Quote, a philosopher on Instagram, admire a genius from afar, but sit across from someone who sees too sharply, feels too deeply, or speaks too honestly. And suddenly, it's war. So, if you've ever been shunned or rejected, not for a genuine flaw, but for your clarity, no, it's not something you did wrong. Your very presence can awaken things in others they're not ready to face. In a world run by ego, that's more dangerous than being evil ever could be. What then do you do when what sets you apart also leaves you on your own? When you crave a connection that feels impossible to find? Schopenhauer didn't sugarcoat this dilemma. He didn't wrap it up in false hope. His answer was blunt and strangely freeing. Solitude. According to Schopenhauer, intellectual superiority leads to a preference for solitude, not as a punishment, but as a kind of liberation. The stronger your mind, the more you need your own company. Most people don't, and likely never will. Understand that's okay. In a society that equates solitude with failure, this perspective is radical. But Schopenhauer flips the script. The one who can be alone and whole is the strongest kind of person. Solitude isn't about lack, it's about presence. The presence of your own self, your own mind, unleashed and unafraid. If this resonates, if you still feel out of place, remember, it's not a flaw. It's proof you see what others don't, and that is its own rare strength. Schopenhauer made it clear, solitude isn't loneliness, it's freedom. For highly intelligent minds, being alone isn't a punishment, but a necessity and a pleasure. Their internal worlds are so rich with ideas, thoughts, and reflections that external distractions often feel empty or meaningless. Unlike the average person, who might seek out company to fill a mental void, deep thinkers treasure solitude because it nourishes their mind. This brings an important question. Is social interaction truly essential for happiness, or is it just a belief we'd been taught since childhood? From a young age, society promotes the idea that being sociable, making friends, and engaging with others are musts for well-being. Those who prefer solitude are often seen as missing out. Yet many of history's greatest geniuses chose isolation intentionally. Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla, Emily Dickinson, Franz Kafka, even Schopenhauer himself. Were they lonely and miserable? Or did they simply understand something most don't, that Socializing often serves as an escape from emptiness rather than a source of true fulfillment. Schopenhauer viewed social life not as an inherent need, but as a diversion for those who lack inner depth. In his view, society's interactions are largely superficial performances rather than genuine intellectual or emotional connection. People conform, maintain appearances, and avoid uncomfortable truths just to fit in. For those who see through this pretense, participating in such a system is exhausting. The burden of clarity, as Schopenhauer called it, means the more truth you see, the less you tolerate illusions. Intelligent people engage with society differently. They don't depend on it for identity or happiness, but instead use it when useful, preferring meaningful conversations over large, shallow gatherings. Here lies a profound paradox. Highly intelligent individuals often withdraw from social life, yet possess a deeper understanding of human nature than most. They recognize how much social life revolves around performance and conformity. They see that the pressure to fit in distracts from the crucial inner journey toward wisdom and self-discovery. To Schopenhauer, solitude is not isolation but necessary condition for pursuing truth, free from external distractions. He famously wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free." This radical idea confronts modern culture's assumption that constant social interaction is essential and solitude unnatural. We are urged to network, connect, and stay busy, but Schopenhauer challenges us to reconsider. The need for socializing often stems from dependency and inability to be with our own thoughts. The intelligent person isn't afraid of being alone. They embrace solitude because it offers the freedom to think deeply, create, and understand themselves without external influence. Many of history's greatest minds lived deliberately isolated lives, not because they had no choice, but because they found richest fulfillment away from society's noise. Newton spent years in solitary study, developing his groundbreaking theories. Tesla devoted himself to invention and remained largely alone. Emily Dickinson rarely left her home, but produced some of the deepest poetry ever written. These people weren't lonely but immersed in the vast richness of their minds. Schopenhauer's philosophy goes even further. He argued that true wisdom requires detachment, not only from social life, but also from the illusions most people live by. He saw the average person caught in an endless loop of distractions, chasing status and validation without questioning why. Intelligent individuals instinctively distance themselves from these illusions because they recognize their temporary and often meaningless nature. For them, socializing often feels like participating in a performance, curating identities to fit in, avoiding uncomfortable realities. The pressure to conform drains their energy and conflicts with their deeper quest for meaning. This awareness heightens the feeling of alienation, but it's not a flaw. It's the consequence of clarity. Intelligent people just can't unquestioningly accept superficial social norms or blind traditions. While they may still engage with society, they do so strategically and selectively, seeking depth over popularity, truth over comfort. This is why intellectuals often prefer small, meaningful conversations over large crowds and gravitate towards people who challenge them intellectually rather than those who offer mere companionship. Despite their withdrawal, highly intelligent individuals remain deeply connected to human nature. They understand it better than most, even if society doesn't always reciprocate. Schopenhauer believed that such profound thinkers often feel disconnected, precisely because society avoids confronting existential questions or uncomfortable truths. This avoidance reinforces the frustration of those who see life's mysteries in all their complexity. Solitude is, therefore, not just preferred by the intelligent, it is required. It protects independent thought from the distractions and conformist pressures of society, allowing the mind to flourish. According to Schopenhauer, the loud noise of social life pulls people away from the most important journey, the inward journey, to understand oneself and reality. This separation from the herd allows for true wisdom to develop, free from external influences. This insight challenges everything modern culture tells us about social life, rather than networking and constant socializing being unequivocally good. Schopenhauer's view urges us to question their necessity and recognize the value of solitude. Sometimes what society calls loneliness is actually the fertile ground where the greatest ideas and truths emerge. In summary, Schopenhauer's perspective reveals that for truly intelligent people, solitude is not a lonely prison, but a sanctuary of freedom. Where others see emptiness, they find possibility. Where others hear silence, they hear their own mind's rich dialogue. Understanding this can help those who feel alienated recognize that their solitude isn't a deficit but a sign that they are living on a profound, rare wavelength. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that genius and solitude are inseparable, not because intelligent people dislike society, but because their minds require a different environment. According to him, deep thinkers naturally detach from the trivial concerns and superficial distractions that occupy most others. This detachment isn't a rejection of humanity, but a necessary space to pursue understanding, art, and philosophy without interruption. In Schopenhauer's view, society tends to value conformity and mediocrity over originality and depth. Those who challenge collective norms often create tension or friction. Intelligent individuals think uniquely and skeptically. They don't engage in the usual social flatteries or follow accepted scripts automatically. This behavior places them at odds with the crowd, which Schopenhauer explained is primarily driven by a blind will to live, an endless pursuit of fleeting pleasures and desires that fosters conformity and resistance to change. But solitude doesn't have to mean loneliness. For Schopenhauer, solitude is a privilege and a foundation for geniuses to cultivate their talents and sharpen their intellect. It creates the conditions for deep thought, creativity, and authentic self-exploration by freeing the mind from social distractions and pressures. The solitude chosen by thoughtful minds allows them to connect more deeply with themselves than constant socializing would permit. It's important to highlight Schopenhauer's distinction between solitude and loneliness. Solitude is chosen and fulfilling. Loneliness is the painful lack of connection. While society often equates being alone with loneliness and social failure, Schopenhauer argued that solitude is actually a form of freedom, the freedom to be truly yourself, unmasked and undistracted. He famously stated, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free." This quote captures the essence of his philosophy, that for the intelligent mind, solitude is necessary to escape the shallowness and noise of social life and to pursue genuine intellectual and emotional growth. At the same time, Schopenhauer acknowledged that this naturally fosters isolation. Men of genius often tolerate only a few friends, because their intellectual heights separate them from ordinary social interactions. The average person, he suggested, cannot bear solitude because they lack the mental resources for such inward journeys. Instead, finding pleasure in the distractions and material consumption of external life, Schopenhauer's appreciation for solitude was also linked to his understanding of human creativity. He believed that true insights, whether in philosophy, art, literature, or science, shriffing itself in the quiet spaces away from the social realm, where the mind is free to observe deeply and patiently. This is why many great creators gravitated toward or chose solitary lives. Furthermore, Schopenhauer's philosophy offers a sober but liberating view on the alienation of the intelligent individual in society. He saw the social world as one filled with posturing, superficiality, and avoidance of uncomfortable truths. Those who see beyond the surface are naturally distanced, not because they lack empathy or kindness, but because they refuse to participate in the collective illusions. This detachment allows for profound insight but comes at the cost of widespread acceptance. As Schopenhauer noted, society often mistakes such individuals for cynics or misanthropes, when in reality, their withdrawal is a response to the shallowness they observe and the exhausting demands of conformity. Modern interpretations of Schopenhauer's ideas echo this complexity. For example, contemporary psychology recognizes that highly intelligent people often feel isolated because their thought processes and emotional sensitivity exceed the social norm. They crave deeper conversations and resonance, but the majority engage in simpler, emotion-driven social bonding, which can feel alienating to the thinker. This consciousness of difference, paired with limited social understanding, lays the groundwork for the loneliness that Schopenhauer described as an existential separation, rooted in keen awareness rather than personal failure. In essence, Schopenhauer invites us to rethink loneliness, not as a deficiency, but as an inevitable and meaningful state for those whose minds operate on a different frequency. His work encourages embracing solitude, not as a sad consequence, but as a vital space for growth, creativity, and authentic existence. The gift of solitude, from alienation to authentic power. To conclude this journey through Schopenhauer's philosophy and the lived experience of intelligent outsiders, it's crucial to distinguish the pain of feeling alone from the power of intentionally chosen solitude. According to Schopenhauer, solitude isn't about isolation or punishment, it's about freedom, authenticity, and inner strength. Solitude as liberation, not lack. Society often misinterprets those who walk alone as lonely, lost, or out of touch. But for the thinker, solitude is a vibrant space. Away from external demands and expectations, you can meet yourself honestly. You have the room to explore your mind's depths, to question, imagine, and create without fear of judgment or interruption. This is why Schopenhauer insisted, a man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. He conceived solitude not as a void, but as fertile and liberating, a necessary ground for becoming your truest self, turning loneliness into creative power. Many people, especially those with high intelligence or creativity, discover that their richest ideas and insights emerge during periods of solitude, without the distractions of social comparison, approval-seeking, or surface-level interaction. The mind is free to think originally. This is how writers, philosophers, inventors, and artists have produced their deepest work, by embracing the silence that lets intuition and reflection flourish. Solitude provides more than just creative energy. It's a space to confront life's pains and existential uncertainties head-on. By sitting with difficult questions, instead of running from them, you can find acceptance and, eventually, a sense of peace that isn't dependent on others. Finding your community without compromising yourself. While Schopenhauer rightly pointed out that the more profoundly one grasps the world's complexities, the more challenging it becomes to find others who share that same vantage point, he also encouraged deep thinkers not to give up hope for connection altogether. The key isn't to change for the crowd, but to cultivate spaces and relationships that value honesty, vulnerability, and depth. That this may mean seeking out small circles or communities built around shared interests or intellectual inquiry, engaging in authentic conversation, even if it means fewer exchanges overall, recognizing that not every relationship will resonate, and that's okay. The goal is not complete social withdrawal, but meaningful engagement on your own terms, embracing self-reliance and authentic freedom. Philosophy offers a liberating message. You don't need to dilute your thoughts, suppress your curiosity, or shrink your presence to be accepted by the herd. Instead, you can choose freedom, the freedom to think and feel deeply, to devote yourself to truth over comfort, and to cultivate your mind's richness without apology. Intellectual distinction, he wrote, leads to unsociability, but with that comes the possibility of tranquility, serenity, and a quiet life undisturbed by the chaos of the masses. Final thought, solitude as your strength. You often find yourself at odds with the crowd, or feeling like an outsider, in a world buzzing with surface-level chatter. You are not broken. You are simply awake, living with a clarity and intensity that few understand and even fewer have the courage to embrace. Rather than seeing your solitude as a failing, recognize it as proof of your uniqueness and potential. Use it to create, to question, to grow, and to love your own company. As Schopenhauer understood, that is not a penalty, but a profound privilege and, perhaps, the ultimate testament to a mind that refuses to settle for less than truth and meaning.